I'm curious, as someone who identifies as a woman, as a Puerto Rican woman, like, where has it been an advantage or a disadvantage to bring those different parts of your identity forward?
Interesting. I think there are certain moments in time, I think more now than before, that I have felt more comfortable in my skin, bringing those aspects of myself out to, like, again, the code switching is hard to get rid of. It's almost encoded now. If you've been doing it for 10 years plus, and for a lot of that time, you didn't recognize it as code switching, you didn't recognize it as me changing myself to fit into an environment, then it's kind of hardwired. And so it does take a lot more effort for me to be authentically myself. I am very, very happy that now I just am who I am, but it has taken me a while to get here. And so I don't know if back then I would see any positives to it. I think the positives were, like I mentioned, in showing up in spaces where some clients did understand you as the authority for that audience, and so that worked to my benefit. But nowadays, I don't recognize any of those moments in the past as necessarily beneficial. I think there were more hindrances to being who I was back then. Now, I think now, especially in a world where the diversity and inclusion is recognized a lot more as a positive versus a negative, at least hopefully in the circles that I am in, because I do recognize it's still, you know, an isolated space. There are many places where it's not recognized as a good thing, but now it is recognized as a good thing and it is accepted and almost praised. And so I show up in the way that I need to. The distinction, and I would say the different thoughts, the different thinking that I can bring to a room with clients is really welcome and is appreciated by the clients that I work with. And I have noticed a lot of those clients are more diverse in and of themselves. There are brand managers that are people of color, Black, brown people that will be more willing to understand where you're coming from and to accept it as what it is. And so the landscape has changed a lot. At least I've been lucky that the landscape has changed. And I've also landed in a place where that difference is accepted and recognized, and everybody is on the same boat a little bit.
Yeah. And so as you've gotten older and wiser, more grounded in who you are, confident in your value, how have you brought your authentic self into different elements of your work? What does that look like for you today to show up fully?
Oh, it's funny because, like I mentioned, I think I've landed in a space where it's back to making work for the Latina audience by a Latina audience. And we like to think about it not as for us by us, but by us for everyone, because we do want to spread that word of like what Latina culture is beyond just the Latina audience. But again, I think it does express itself more in front of clients than anywhere else, because I'm back in the space where my colleagues day in and day out are also Latina. And so we bring it almost as a united force when we are out there in front of clients, in front of brands that truly are willing to understand and kind of embrace the community, the Latina community and the Latina culture. And so I feel really supported in those moments because it's not just me alone bringing it. There was a time where I worked in agencies that it was me alone, and I had to advocate a lot for myself and for the work that we were bringing, whether it was meant to be for a Latina audience or not. It felt not reflective of everybody. And so those moments I felt a lot more pressure in saying, well, this is, pardon me, the whitest thing I've ever seen. And so, and you're talking to an audience that, yes, majority white, but increasingly diverse as we go younger in generation and generation. And so I felt the need to be a lot more stringent about it those days. But now I have a support team. Now I have a crew of people with me and behind me, and an agency that supports that way of thinking and that doesn't mold itself towards what the client is asking, but it molds itself towards what the community requires and what the community needs. And so now it's easy. Now it's just natural. Now it feels like I'm finally at a space where I don't have to code switch in front of clients. I don't have to necessarily hold myself back. That also comes with age. I'm a 45-year-old woman that now recognizes I don't need to mold myself to others' expectations, only to myself. And so that also comes through in how I show up in those meetings and in those spaces.